a very special debate on India's education system. The question we are asking today, which is relevant to every parent, policymaker and educator in the country, is India ready to push the envelope in education? India has the world's largest population in the age bracket of 5 to 24 years. That's about 450 million, staggering numbers, isn't it? This is considered to be our country's biggest advantage and strength. But we also know we can either lose this advantage or make it work for us, for our society, our economy, and more importantly, for our own children's future. My esteemed panel today, from a Mumbai studio, Prahlad Kakkar, ad filmmaker. Prahlad, thank you very much for joining in. It would be really interesting to get your perspective.
Pleasure.
Delhi studio, A.K. Sharma, former director, NCERT. Mr. Sharma, thank you so much for making the time. M.K. Kao, former education secretary. His insights will be absolutely useful in this discussion. Mr. Kao, thank you. Lata Vaidyanathan, Principal Modern School. Lata, pleasure. And Meena Ganesh, CEO, NMD Pearson Education Services. Let's get down, I think, to the ABC of this subject. How do we make our education system more competitive and set benchmarks which are the best, not just in India, but globally? And I think the first thing we'd like to start with is all-round education. Prahlad, everybody today in India is hankering after one thing. Education is so academics focused. Our recruitment system is focused around that, book learning. How do you change that, and how big a challenge is it for you when you go out to hire?
See, the first thing that I've realized is that if you have a first class student, as far as the certificate is concerned, I consider him immediately rejected, because he's got a tunnel vision, he has put himself into a book, and he has no idea of the practicalities of the real world. You know, in my profession, you have to be a jack of all trades. You must know everything about everything. You can't just be a specialist in such a small, narrow field that all you're doing is surrounding yourself with more and more burrowing into a tunnel. You have to actually reflect a society which is changing so rapidly that if you're not a part of that society, if you're not a part of that change, you don't fit in. There's the elitist schools in cities which train very good kids up to international level, and there are the village schools in this country where they give you a certificate of education, they are unemployable. It's deplorable that so many village children are given such a huge disadvantage because they're not given a decent education. It's all on paper, and all the money that the government spends on rural education is a complete waste.
All right. Very good points made there, that if he sees a first class Mr. Kao, he will not hire that person. And that speaks a lot. And the second important point, which we'll come to a little bit later in terms of the quality of education which is being imparted. But all-round education is something that the government is noticing. It's not something that just a handful of policy makers have noted or schools have noted. Even the government has now unveiled a national fitness program, and there are several other initiatives which are being taken.
Many attempts have been made in the past to make it a better system, but the problem is that we have large numbers, and it is difficult to reach those large numbers without compromising on quality. Now, what has happened today is that in the elementary education field, I was going through some reports which have come from ASER, and they are saying that bulk of the students who are doing classes 5 are of the level of classes 1 and 2 as far as literacy and numeracy are concerned.
Right.
Now, this is an abominable thing, and what Prahlad was saying just now is absolutely right.
You know, a very recent report which was released, this is the annual status of education report 2011, had very stunning figures, enrollment figures for rural India. Let's focus there because that seems to be a big problem today. 96.7% of rural India enrolled in school, but if you actually tested their English and their math, it's been going down.
You know, I think I wish there were more Prahlad Kakkars who said if you get those 10% marks, no employment, because it's so limited. But look at the challenge that the students actually have in real life. You don't get those marks, you don't get an admission to colleges. If you're going to put that kind of pressure on children, saying that if you're not 100%, and you look at the admission criteria in colleges, unless higher education changes the way it will look at students, not just the employers or the employment market that Prahlad was talking about, I think things are not going to change. It's a complete downward extension rather than a developmentally appropriate system for education. Your other question which you just asked, saying, what are we going to change that quality? How are we going to change that quality? You know, somewhere we have all made the mistake of one size fits all. It actually doesn't. And there are children with so many differing abilities. There are children with so many different types of intelligences. I think our challenge really is the numbers. I think it's about the size of our classrooms as well. If we want to deliver quality, I think all those little integrities need to be worked out very carefully. We are actually living in very interesting times, and I don't think I'm a pessimist. I do believe that we are moving forward and all the reforms must get stabilized. We just need to give ourselves some time without being dejected by some of the reports and results.
Some of the points that Lata raised, Mr. Sharma, it's something which has been debated again and again in NCERT, the 10th board doing away with it. What do you make as an assessment process? The question is so wide. I know we keep digressing from the main thing, but give us your thoughts on what is the key challenge today when you look at all-round education and all-round development.
The most important is to make a transformational change in the process of teaching and learning. The rigidity of the curriculum is one of the obstacles in the whole exercise. There was a study which was done some time ago with asking children why don't they go to school? And the net outcome of that study was that the curriculum is irrelevant. What they are being taught is not absolutely suiting to our context. So what is probably needed is that if we maintain the curricular structures as they are, the focus has to be on certain other aspects, whatever the curricular area you have to teach. For instance, it's very important that we develop in these our children the whole process of spirit of inquiry, an inquiring mind, without which no learning probably will prosper. A spirit of inquiry, courage to question, a divergent thinking rather than a convergent thinking, and being objective, not accepting things before they have applied a test of analytical logic to them, skills of problem solving, skills of decision making, and aesthetic sensibility.
So you're saying the curriculum is not geared up to actually...
The curriculum is not geared to suit this kind of value systems that would come out of it.
Right.
In fact, irrespective of the subject, if this becomes the focus, I think it makes a headway for quality.
That will be change. Meena, Pearson, a lot of work being done at a global level, and you have the best benchmarks in front of you, best curriculums in front of you, and then you have India experiences.
Yeah.
Tell us, how would we do something that Mr. Sharma is suggesting?
Well, what Dr. Sharma said is absolutely right. And the reason why I say that is I have actually straddled two worlds, the corporate world and now the education world. And I see that the primary skill that is lacking is not a subject knowledge, but really the ability to question, to problem solve, to work with people. Those are things that are never taught in a school.
Right.
So that is something which fundamentally needs to change. And whatever we are doing in the education system today is focused primarily on that. The kind of tools that you can provide a teacher such that the teacher's time is spent in engaging the child, developing the child rather than delivering knowledge, or rather delivering data. I wouldn't even say knowledge, it's really information that you are delivering. Now, there could be a very different way for the child to get that information, but the teacher's job should be really to work with the child, engage them and develop those skills.
When I hear the panel, and I'm a mother as well of two children, so I can see the kind of education which they get vis-a-vis, let's say, what their cousins get in a different country. It sounds so simple, why can't we do it?
Most of our curriculum, as he rightly pointed out, is dealing with content. We need to deal with skills. And because today content, data, whatever knowledge in a certain way, of course it requires some transformation before it becomes knowledge, but all this is available to the child, and the teacher is really not required in that sense just to make it available to the child. There's so much of multimedia influences, so much of resources and sourcing that they can do themselves that sometimes they'll find the teacher irrelevant. So what is it that the classroom transformation needs to undergo is to make sure that this inquiry, the spirit of inquiry was talking about, allowing the children to question and not to necessarily look for the right culminating answers. I think, and also allowing the child to find one more kind of answer, not expecting to deliver what they want to hear. Very often the entire race in class to a finish is about making the teacher smile because she gets what she wants from the child, what she wants to hear. And here is the challenge. I think it is, the transformation has to happen with the teachers. The entire way, you know, if you become yesterday's teachers for tomorrow's children, we'll get nowhere. That is something we really need to look
So we
carefully.
come back to that very big, let's say, area or gap in education, which is enabling our teachers to teach rightly or create inquiring minds. We're going to come back, take a very quick break, because if you look at any figure, whether it's the teacher-child ratio, not just in rural India, where of course the problem of quality teaching itself remains a humongous issue for the government and for us to deal with as a society. But even in urban areas, this is a big issue that we need to deal with. Our panelists' view in this very special discussion on how do you push the envelope in India's education. Ensure that India actually uses its demographic advantage and does not lose its demographic dividend. Very simply put, what are we talking about? We are talking about the fact that almost half of this nation is under 15 years old, and that can be a huge asset if built right. When you're talking about grooming and nurturing your children to become global leaders, to become global workforce, you need to get them to those standards. And how do you start? The panel just talked about the teaching methodology, and that is a very basic crux of pushing the envelope in education. Mr. Kao, how do you tackle teaching right? Lata said the B.Ed system has to change. Let's forget the urban-rural divide. Any teacher, how do you get them to create inquiring thinking minds?
You cannot forget the urban-rural divide. In the rural areas, we are still at such a low level that even to get them to the level of urban in India is itself a problem.
Accepted.
And I think we should not go the reverse way, that is give information technology to the rural schools without there being either the students capable of understanding what they are being taught, nor having the teachers who have the capacity to teach them. In a school like hers, for example, you can do away with the teacher and the students can learn on their own. That is their quality.
I don't think so.
So redundant.
That is their quality. No, you go to Delhi public school, you go to modern school, you go to any of these frontline schools. The students are better than the teachers.
All right.
Today, when I talk to my grandson, who is just 6 years old, he teaches me information technology.
All right. So you're saying that the problem more is in rural areas where the quality of teachers is a
In
much
rural
larger
areas,
issue.
the problem is different. There we have to reduce the size of the classroom. We have to give knowledge of English language. The greatest disadvantage which the rural child has is that he doesn't speak English.
Right.
Or if he speaks English, it is of such a low quality that he is immediately identified that this fellow has come from a Muslim village.
Absolutely right. Prahlad, come in here. Why have we made English the most dominating language, leaving out 70% of our children? That's the biggest problem here, isn't it?
It is.
And now something that we have to live with.
And it's also to do with snobbery. Now, there's an experiment that is being carried out right now in Tamil Nadu, what you call spearheaded by the Isha Yoga Foundation for rural. And they find that to get children into school, they have to first attract them with a midday meal. So the parents, instead of making them work, actually send them to school because they are given a full-scale midday meal. Once they're in the school, they're taught English, And I disagree completely with Sir, where he says that there shouldn't be access to IT, because they are taught computer sciences. So when you teach them English and computer sciences side by side, suddenly a whole world opens out to those kids. But the most important thing about children today is they've forgotten how to read. And I think that's a huge lacuna. Nobody reads, say, a newspaper. So the common ground is that when a teacher and a student read the newspaper every day and discuss the news in the newspaper, they come on to common ground. If you ask people today about specifics, especially children, they're very smart. They go on Google and they do whatever they have to. But you ask them about current affairs, they're clueless.
Meena, let's move to what Prahlad said, that you cannot write off technology. Technology is empowering. Technology can actually bring about the revolution in rural education that we have been wanting for this country. There's been a mobile revolution.
Now, while you may say that it's in the urban areas that you should be providing technology, or technology is more accessible, but actually the problem that needs to be solved is in the rural areas and is better solved through technology. For instance, if we can provide a good teaching aid to a rural school, the fact that the teacher-student ratio is so skewed can actually be addressed by that, because the teacher can use this technology to bring about to life whatever they are trying to teach, and that can significantly impact the level of learning of the children. And then again, personalized training using tablets, and I know that we are working hard to create really low cost tablets in India, and that could be a nice big jump that India can take.
Dr. Sharma, would you agree? We need to take a leap forward. Now, small minuscule steps like training teachers is not the answer.
Raise the bar of entry to teacher education programs itself.
Okay.
All the world over, the entire teacher education from early childhood to higher secondary level is in the domain of the university education. Kothari Commission had made this suggestion that break the isolation of teacher education from within itself, from the school system and from higher education itself. No nation can rise above the level of its teachers. That is the first statement in part 9th of the National Policy on Education.
Right.
I think the teacher needs to know and balance these two. Apart from upgrading her own skills in both these areas, she needs to figure out what will make it relevant. Because I think it was rightly pointed out that while there's so much of information, they still don't read a newspaper.
Right.
So there is a staying power, a thinking power, and thinking requires some kind of timing in it. So I feel that a lot, and then it's getting more and more interdisciplinary, the whole understanding. Because if you're, for example, I think you can be people will have to accept that there can be a fantastic poet with absolutely good scientific temper.
Knowledge of Hindi and vernacular tongues is abysmally low in the urban areas. If I talk to my grandson today, he will speak very good English, but he won't be able to speak Hindi. He cannot read Hindi. They don't give enough emphasis on teaching of local language, our own language. That is something also which will create a big problem, because we will get Anglophiles running this country, manning all the posts, not understanding what the Janta is talking about.
All right. But the big question that maybe just a lot more needs to be done when it comes to education. There is a huge danger of us losing the demographic dividend, and this is now being spoken about. I think 10 years ago, and Meena, you've been in the corporate circle. Remember the way we used to get these articles all about India's demographic advantage, and now everybody is questioning whether India is going to lose that demographic advantage. So,
correct.
What do you do?
So, to just paraphrase what you said, it can either be a demographic dividend or a demographic disaster, right? So, if we want the dividend to be really paying, we have to ensure our children are ready for the future. And the future is not what we all know or what we have seen. It's a very, very nebulous future. The problems are different. You need people who can think, who can be interdisciplinary in the way they put problems together and solutions together, and that cannot happen if we just continue on the same path that we have. Our teachers are currently positioning themselves as sages on the stages. They're standing here and downloading information to the children. That will never do.
That will not work.
Right? So there are many things that have to change, whether it's the infrastructure, the technology that the teachers use, the material that they use, the way they teach, and of course their own thinking, their own comfort in being a facilitator rather than being a sage.
All right, it's actually such a humongous subject. I think we could do a whole day debate on this and still not come down to the absolutely right answers, because there is a challenge that India faces. But as Lata said, that she's very optimistic. She will not be pessimistic. I think nobody in the panel here is a pessimist, because we do believe that we can do. A lot of traction is already being seen from the government, from the private companies as well, from the corporate leadership in education. And despite all the challenges, there are outstanding teachers also. I'm going to come to that in just a minute, but let me thank the panel first. Prahlad, thank you very much. Very interesting points of view. Dr. Sharma, Mr. Kao, Lata, thanks very much. Meena, I still have a question for you, because there are, we focus so much on the teaching skills, on the teaching way, the lack of interdisciplinary approach, yet there are enough inspiring stories of outstanding teachers across India, and Pearson would like to honor them. So do visit our website ndtv.com, Teaching Awards, for the details of the participation. Last date for application is 15th November, and this will be followed by a awards ceremony in December as well. And before I wrap up the show, Meena, why? I mean, the entire panel has focused on how we need to upgrade our learning system, which will involve upgrading the teaching skills as well. Why the awards? What's the focus?
See, if you look back in our own lives, each of us can point to that one teacher or a bunch of teachers who really made a difference, motivated us, changed our track, and that is inspired despite of all the odds in which they were operating. They didn't have all the technology and this fancy curricula and holistic learning principles, none of that, but they were just so motivated. So I believe even today, even whether it is in the rural or in the urban areas, whether in any subject or in co-curricular or sports or teaching special children, there are teachers who are absolutely brilliant. They need to be rewarded, they need to be brought to the limelight, and I am hoping that that will bring back a little bit of that excitement about education as a career. It is something that we would like to have more inspired people coming into.
Education as a career needs to be honored, needs to be highlighted, needs to become probably the most glamorous career. Why not?
The interesting part is Teachers' Day come and the Teachers' Day go. There are so many awards, be it Filmfare Awards, be it any other kind of corporate awards, the television awards for the best people. I think that are becoming more and more meaningful. But end of the day, when I look at the paper next day, no teacher's life is really celebrated, which says yesterday was Teacher's Day, the president gave. It passes off as a small item.
So please do log into the URL which you can see on your screen, and let's see if we can bring to you some inspiring stories. And as Meena said, that always, every one of us, each one of us remembers that one teacher who has made an impact on our lives. And with the right education and skills, India has the potential to become an economic leader. India's children can be the workforce to the entire world. So let's get this right and let's push the envelope. That's a new beginning in education. Thank you very much for watching this special show. Goodbye.